Welcome to SCL, the Subject, Composition and Light Photography Podcast. Hi everybody, welcome to SCL, the Subject, Composition and Light Photography Podcast, Episode 7 for the 4th of August 2008. Hi everybody, and I hope you've had a good week, taking lots of photos, enjoying the summer weather where you are. Unfortunately it's been chucking it down here, raining all the time. There's a bit of sunshine today, so maybe I'll get out a bit later and take some photographs. For people who are new to the podcast, my name's Rob from robnunphoto.com. I'm a beginner amateur photographer, and I have my blog at www.robnunphoto.com, ROBNUNN photo.com, and obviously the podcast. And I'm learning to be a better photographer, and as I go along I like to share some of my learning experiences with everybody else, so that's why I do the podcast and the blog. You can find me on Flickr, just look for Scale Speeder. We've got a Flickr group as well that you can search for called Rob Nunn Photo, I think, where we have photo assignments and technical technique challenges and that sort of thing. So hello and welcome. Also, as I'm going through the podcast, I tend to refer to websites and articles. And so if you visit robnunphoto.com and click on the podcast link or look on the homepage, you'll see the show notes for this particular podcast, Podcast 7. Right, so what have I been doing in the last week or so? Well, not taking as many photographs as I'd like. As I say, the weather's been really rubbish. Almost swore there. And so I haven't been out that much. So I've been working on something called the course for the website. And as I explained last week, I was really aware that the problem with the blog is that the problem with my blog is it's very sort of time linear. So as I do posts, after a while they disappear off the homepage, and you can find them by searching for them using the categories or the search box, or look in the tag cloud. But I really wanted somewhere sort of permanent where I could put articles that relate into learning about photography. So there's a new section on the website now. If you look underneath the big picture at the top and look on the right hand side, there's a little menu and it says the course. And what I've done is I've written a few articles and referred to some of my old articles in it that start off with things like buying a camera, what accessories you might think about buying, through to basic rules of composition, basic editing, using Flickr, and sort of further reading. So if you're sort of new to photography and thinking, alright, where do I start? You know, that's a really good place, hopefully. I mean, have a look at the articles, have a read, tell me what you think. I mean, I've probably missed out loads of stuff. I know I was doing the article on composition, and I've managed to completely miss out the fact that in a landscape you should always have a foreground interest, middle and background. It wasn't until I'd read it like after, why didn't I mention that? So I did that back in. Well, I sort of at the end of the last episode I alluded to what I'll be talking about this week with a little sound, and you've probably, if you've been reading the blog or looking at my photo stream on Flickr, you probably guessed that last Sunday I got a film SLR from the car boot sale. What I'll do, a little bit of history first about it, that I picked up from my dad that I'd forgotten about until I saw him a couple of days ago. In the early 80s, from I think it was 79 to 82, we lived in Hong Kong because my dad was in the Royal Navy, and he got a posting to the Royal Navy base out there, HMS Tamar, and obviously the whole family goes, and we got to live in Hong Kong Island on a place called Bonham Towers, which was, if you know Hong Kong, it was just up from Centre Street, so it's right in the middle of the Chinese, well, the whole of Hong Kong is Chinese, but it wasn't on like an army base or anything like that. It was a block of flats just down from the peak, And for me it was a wonderful time, learning time. I was only young. I was probably 9 when we left and came back when I was 12, and it was a brilliant experience. And because my dad was in the Navy, and he used to do things with the radar and the radio communications for the whole of sort of Hong Kong. We used to go on trips to all the outlying islands like Lantau Island, and the ones that are close to the Chinese border. So absolutely fantastic place and sort of time in my life to grow up with. And one of the things you could always buy out there cheap was things like cameras, and my dad had a Peafowl SLR film camera, which was made in China, which was a fully manual SLR. Didn't even have a light meter on it. You had to like carry a handheld light meter, and so we used to use that, and it used to be quite cool because Hong Kong was ahead of its time, so you'd have 1 hour processing labs everywhere. So you'd go out, take some 35mm shots, and then go to the 1 hour processing lab, put the film in, go to the Pizza Hut or something, come back, and you could watch the pictures coming out of the machine. But one thing that I'd forgotten that happened while we were out there, my mum and dad for my birthday bought me a really nice SLR. But I didn't know about this till years after. But what happened is, when they were out went out for the night to one of the floating restaurants in Aberdeen, they took the camera along to take some test shots and left it in the taxi on the way back. So, I never got it. I mean, I'm not bothered by it. It's quite a funny story now. But you'll see when I talk about this camera that I got, it's sort of related. So, what happened was, when Oliver, my son, finished school for the summer, they sent him home with a little plastic point-and-shoot 35mm film camera, and I thought, but no film in it. And I thought, yeah, that's quite interesting. That, I mean, would I really fancy having a go with film? And you tend to think, well, it's a bit expensive, isn't it, paying for film and developing and things. But then I thought, well, it might be a good learning experience at least to have a go. But I didn't want to use his little plastic one. I thought, well, when I go to the car boot sales on a sort of Sunday morning with the missus, there's always loads of film kit that people are selling off. SLRs especially, and I hadn't really taken that much interest before, apart from looking at the lens sizes just to see if they had like 46mm filters, so I could use them on my Fujifilm S5700. So last Sunday I thought, oh no, I'm really going to have a look around and see what I can see. I didn't do any research. I don't know anything about film cameras. All I had in the back of my head was, look out for a name that like Nikon or Canon. But I didn't really have any hope of seeing anything like that. So as I was wandering round, there was a few stalls, and they looked all right, but a lot of them were, I say the word newer SLRs, but they were sort of plastic ones. They needed batteries, and they didn't always turn on, and I was a bit reticent. But then I got to this one stall where this chap had a Minolta sitting there, and I thought, oh right, Minolta, I know Minolta. I've heard of that name. I know they're not big now in digital, but I heard that, and it caught my eye because it was silver and black, and I picked it up, and this thing weighed a ton. I mean, solid, basically like a solid lump of milled aluminium. This thing was. And I don't know much about SLRs, but I checked out the lens, and I saw that it had a 50mm prime lens, so not a zoom, and I thought, oh, that's good, because when you go on forums and things about SLRs, they tend to talk about, that 50mm is a great size to have, because it's the same aspect ratio really as your eye, so you're seeing things. So when you take a photograph, it looks really similar to how it would if you were just looking at the scene. And I also saw that the aperture on the lens was an f1.4, which is really big aperture. And I thought, oh, brilliant, because what that does is when you can go to such a big aperture, you can get really good depth of field effects. So I thought, oh, excellent. So I had a look through the viewfinder, and it looked clear and everything. Used the focus, and that seemed to work okay, and the aperture ring turned round nice and clicked nice and smooth. And I had a chat with the chap selling it, and I think he said that it had belonged to his dad, but his daughter had used it a couple of years ago, and it had taken some nice pictures. And he showed me how to turn on the light meter, because this is a fully manual camera. No aperture priority mode, no program mode, nothing like that. It's fully manual. But he showed me how you look through. It has a tiny little button cell battery that runs the light meter, but everything else is mechanical, like clockwork. You turn the winder to wind the film on, and that primes the shutter. And so you don't need a battery in it. You could use it in minus 20 degrees Celsius, and it wouldn't matter, because you don't need the battery apart from just to take a light reading. And so I said, "Oh, how much do you want for it?" And he said, "Oh, how about a tenner?" So I gave him a tenner, and he threw in. He had a Vivitar flash there as well, with like one of those brackets that attaches to the tripod mount. So I thought, oh, brilliant, because I fancy playing around with a bit of flash. And he seemed like a nice chap, so I thought, right, I'll get it. So I took it home, went on the internet, and it's a Minolta SRT 101 with a 50mm 1.4 MC Rockor lens on it. And apparently the SRT 101 was the biggest selling SLR of the 1970s, because Minolta were really popular SLR camera manufacturer. And the reason why the SRT 101 was so popular in the SRT range was they were the first manufacturer to really have through the lens metering, light metering. Before that you had to have separate light meters, or you had to do something called stopping down. I don't really know what that means, but it made light metering a little bit more complicated. But I sort of downloaded the manual, and the way you use it basically is you put your film in, you set your film speed on the sort of top dial, and then when you want to take a picture, you look through the viewfinder, and on the right hand side there's like this little needle that goes up and down depending on the light in the scene. And then as you change the shutter speed or the aperture, there's like a little magnifying glass that moves up and down, and you just have to get them to match. So you make sure the little magnifying glass is over the needle, and that means you've got a correctly exposed shot. And this apparently was quite revolutionary at the time. But it's really easy to use, and quite fast as well to do. I mean, not as fast as fully automatic mode, but nice and simple. And what they did in the SRT 101 as well, which was good, it actually has, I mean, it's basic technology now of ancient technology, but it had a special metering system that involved 2 photo cells in different parts of the camera. And the idea is that when you want to take an exposure reading, you always have the camera in landscape mode, and sort of you look at the picture, and the reason for that is it compensates for the fact that the sky can be brighter than the ground, and they've set it up so it takes pictures like that. So if you want to take a portrait landscape, if you know what I mean, so you want the camera on its side, you hold the camera in the landscape position first, take a reading, put your shutter speed and your aperture values in, and then you flip it on its side and take the picture. Really, really easy to use. And it also has a couple of sort of more, I guess, I don't know if they're advanced for the time, but I was quite surprised that it had these. It has something called a shutter depth of field preview button as well, which I'd read about SLRs, but never really understood what it meant. But apparently when you're ever looking through your viewfinder or looking at the screen on the back of your camera, the aperture on your camera is always wide open at its maximum amount, so that you get the maximum light in, so that when you're lining up pictures, you actually aren't getting a representation of the depth of field. Because if the camera were to, say you were to put in, I don't know, f13.5 or whatever, the viewfinder would be too dark, you wouldn't be able to see through it very well. And so that means you never really get a true representation of what the picture's going to turn out like, unless you've got depth of field preview. So what you do with this one is you line up your shot, you choose your aperture, you click the depth of field preview button, and it stops down the aperture, so that you get a true idea of what the depth of field's going to be like. So that's really cool. And it also has mirror lockup as well. Now the reason for that is that when you're using an SLR, a film one or a digital, when you take the picture, the little mirror that shines the light up into the viewfinder has to snap up out of the way. And if you're using long exposures, or you just want a steady shot, the problem with that is that causes the camera to vibrate slightly. And so by using mirror lockup, you can get rid of that. So what you would do is you line up your shot, flick the mirror lockup switch round, the mirror locks up, obviously you can't see through the lens then, and then you can use, it's got a shutter delay button as well, Well, it's one of those clockwork things you pull down, or you could use a one of those sort of remote triggers that you screw into the top of the shutter release button. So yeah, so really easy to use. Probably took me about 10 minutes to figure out how to use it. And as I say, it's fully manual, so there isn't much more to it than that. So I was really chuffed. The flash he gave me didn't work with it, and I probably spent half an hour putting this thing on and off the top of the camera, thinking, why doesn't it work? But then I read the manual again, and the SRT 101 has a cold shoe on the top of it, which means that it can't trigger a flash via the shoe on the top of the camera. You have to have a separate lead. So once I figured that, I thought, oh great. But to be honest, I'm probably not going to use flash very much on this, because it's a bit hit and miss at the best of times, even with a digital camera, when you're using flash, whether you're going to get things overexposed or underexposed. And I think I'll just stick with taking normal pictures. So anyway, so I showed my dad sort of a few days later, and he went, oh, it's a Minolta that, we were going to get, the camera we lost in Hong Kong was a Minolta. And I wonder if this was the same camera. It's sort of the same era. I mean, it would have been the last of the SRT 101s at the beginning of the 80s. But I thought, oh wow, a bit of a link back to history. So anyway, that afternoon I dashed up to Asda to get some 35mm film, and I got a pack of Fujifilm ASA 200 for about £6. Well, that's brilliant. And I sort of spent half an hour loading my first film, because I wasn't really sure how to do it, and the pictures in the manual weren't that clear, but I thought I got it in okay. And then I took some shots during the afternoon that day, just playing around with it. But then what I did was, a couple of days later, I got up quite early and went out to Fort Brockhurst, the local Victorian fort we have around here, to use it with my S5700 as well, because what I wanted to do was take some shots with the 5700 and with the Minolta, and sort of get a feel for the differences, so I'll be able to see what the difference in quality was like. And the whole experience of using a manual film SLR was really eye-opening, because it slows you down so much. Because what you're thinking is, you're thinking, right, I've got 24 shots on this roll of film. I don't want to waste a single one, because they cost money to develop. And so you spend a lot of time. You sort of look through the viewfinder, you sort of frame your picture. You've got a fixed 50mm lens, so if the framing isn't quite right, you have to physically move, and it makes you think a lot more about that. And your eye is looking around the viewfinder for any distractions that might be creeping in, so you sort of move and recompose. And then you think about your exposure, and you're thinking, right, okay, it doesn't warn you if your shutter speed's getting too low, where you might get camera shake, so you've always got to bear in mind sort of that basic rule where your shutter speed should always be 1 over your focal length. So with a 50mm SLR lens, for handheld shots, you should be using a minimum of 1/50th of a second at least, to avoid shutter camera shake. So you're looking at that and you're thinking, okay, what sort of depth of field do I want on this shot? And then you put your aperture in, say, I don't know, 2.8, adjust your shutter speed accordingly, and then you're lining it up, and you're thinking, and because this has taken you a minute or so, then maybe a cloud's gone over and the exposure's changed, so you adjust your shutter speed again, and you're looking, and then you go to click it, and I've forgotten to wind the camera on, so wind it on, and then you line it up again, and you click and you take your shot. You've got no feedback straight away. I caught myself several times taking a shot and then looking at the back of the camera, and obviously there's nothing there. But it really slowed you down and really made me think about my composition, and where was my rule of thirds, where was my foreground interest, is this an interesting shot, where's the distractions to the shot, that sort of thing, am I getting the exposure right? And it was really enjoyable as well. You feel like you're taking proper photographs, because you've got the mechanical sound of winding the camera on, and the snap of the shutter, the mirror going up, and the snap of the shutter. So really, really nice. And if you look on the blog, there is a comparison I've done where I took the film pictures and compared them with pictures I took at a similar time with the Fujifilm. They're not exactly the same frames, but it gives you an idea of the different it's strange, the quality on the Fujifilm, if you zoom in to 100%, the quality of the Fujifilm S5700 is better in terms of pixels, because the Fujifilm ASA200 is quite a grainy film, or the developer made it quite grainy, but they have a different look about them, more organic. It's a bit difficult to describe, but have a look. So anyway, so I took the pictures and I used up my sort of 24 exposures, and I was like, ooh, I need to get them developed now. And so I went up to ASDA again and said, look, I've never developed a film before. Well, for years and years and years. What do I do? And they said, don't worry, just give us the film and come back in an hour. What do you want? So I said, right, I wanted the larger than normal prints, and they put them on a CD as well. So I said, yep, I could have the CD, and I think it. So then I was like, sort of had an hour to kill, so I came home again, and I was like, oh, dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum, what am I going to do? And you're thinking, did I set the exposure right? Is the camera working? I mean, the light meter could have been broken. Did I load the film right? All this sort of stuff. So after an hour, I sort of rushed back up to ASDA, and I was like, oh, have you got them? And they're like, yeah, there you go, pay your money. And I think it cost me £6 or £7 to have them developed, which I thought wasn't bad, because I was getting sort of 24, I think I ended up with 25 prints, and the CD with them all on. And I had a quick look, and they're actually quite nice. I like them. For a first go with the film SLR, where I didn't really know what I'm doing, they're pretty cool, some of the shots, and I tell you, the best thing was having the photographs in my hand, to have proper photographs, nice largest prints, just flicking through them. And I take quite a few pictures, and I look at them on Flickr or DeviantArt on my PC and email them to people and things like that, but it's not the same. Having those proper photographs there was really nice. It was like I'd really achieved something with these photographs. I know I can print out my digital ones, but the whole analogue process was really good. The other thing that really impressed me as well was the CD that ASDA produced that came with the prints, and ASDA used Fujifilm processing, and the quality of their scans, which I guess they scan the negatives or something as it's going through, are really, really good. What I found was that the scans on the CD were better than the prints, because some of the prints, the crops were a little bit off. There was an example of a shot where on the photograph it chopped off a little bit in front of a boat, but on the CD the picture was perfect as I'd taken it. So yeah, I was really chuffed, and I really enjoyed it and liked having the pictures. And and it brings back a bit of the mystery to photography as well, and the fact that you don't know how the pictures are going to turn out. And I think the most important thing, it slows you down. So so the learning points I think I take from using the SRT 101 is the fact that I need to slow down with my digital photography, take more time to compose my shots, so I don't end up with loads of pictures that I don't use and end up throwing away. It really made me think about all the things I've learnt so far in terms of composition, subject, and thinking about each picture and trying to apply them into each picture. And the 50mm lens really makes you've physically got to walk around to get the best out of the picture, and all these things I can apply to my digital camera as well, which is the great thing, because I'm not going to be using the Minolta all the time, because I can't afford to have develop 3 or 4 rolls of film every week. But I know what I'm definitely going to do is, when I'm going out on photo walks, I'm going to have my Fujifilm with me. That's my main camera. Digital is the way, but I'm going to have the SRT 101 there as well. So if there's a real special compositional light I see, I'm going to whip it out. And to be honest, I've already ordered a Kokin filter holder for the front of it, a 55mm one, so I can use a grad on the front and my polarizer, just to play around with that. And I've got my eye on a couple of lenses on eBay as well. I think what I really want a wide angle. I haven't seen any of them yet, but there's a couple of telephoto lenses on there as well that I think might be cool. And these are fixed focal length prime lenses, because the beauty with the prime lens is the pictures you can get can be really, really sharp and crisp. And I think there's a 130mm prime lens, which will for shooting things like the wildlife around Fort Brockhurst, the 50mm you can't really get close enough before they run away, but with the 130, that'll enable me to do that. So, if you fancy getting a film SLR, I mean, if you fancy an SRT 101, which I can recommend, they're incredibly cheap on eBay. Just look out for somebody selling one with a pack of lenses, maybe with a 50mm prime and some other fixed focal lengths on. And I mean, I've seen them really, really cheap. Do a little bit of research. The only thing you've got to watch out for the SRTs is the button cell battery they use for the light meter. You can't buy them anymore, and so what you have to use is an equivalent voltage battery, but then pack it out with silver foil. So that's something worth bearing in mind. But film cameras in general are so cheap, as long as you don't try and buy the last Canon or the last Nikon film SLR, when they can be quite expensive. But if you go for something else like a Minolta, there's loads of them, and go down your local car boot sale or flea market and just make sure the camera works in your hand, and it looks like it's been well cared for, and then get one. I mean, this for a tenner, was it a tenner for the camera? Probably spent £12 on film and processing, and I've got another 4 films to use. The amount of things that you'll learn doing it and using the film SLR that you can transfer over to your digital images it's worth its weight in gold, if you ask me. And the other thing by using the SLR that's done has really turned me on to buying it, eventually getting a digital SLR, mainly because of the quality of the lens and the depth of field. I know that the viewfinder on the Fujifilm is good, but it is electronic when you're looking through it. And nothing really compares to having the viewfinder where you look through and you're seeing the proper light on the scene. It's easier on the eye, you don't have to strain as much. And I think maybe Christmas or afterwards I need to start thinking about saving up and getting a nice Nikon or Canon. I'm not going to go mad. I'll probably get something like a D40 or a D60 or a Canon Rebel. But yeah, they're very, very nice. So my recommendation, if you've got a spare 20 quid, get down to your local car boot sale, have a hunt round and get yourself a nice film SLR. Spend a tenner on film and processing, and you'll learn loads. Okay, I had some not many questions on the website this week. Simone asked some interesting questions though. She had some queries about GPS photo taggers, and she was deciding whether to get something like the AMOD 3080 or the Q-Stars BTQ 1000p. What these devices do is they log your GPS position, your latitude and longitude as you're wandering around, so that when you get home you can load up your pictures, load up the file from the GPS photo tracker, and the software can put the latitude and longitude into the EXIF data on your photographs. And people use this so that when you go to Flickr or Picasa or photo sharing sites, you can look at your pictures on a map, so you can organise them on a map. You can put them on Google Earth as well, the 3D program. You can create track files and all this sort of thing. And she was really wondering about the pros and cons of the different models. So I thought, for people who were maybe thinking about that, excuse me, let's have a quick drink. I'll just do a quick description. So the AMOD 3080 and the Q-Stars, although they do the same job, are quite different beasts. The AMOD 3080 basically is a driverless GPS data tagger. So what that means is it can work with PC or Mac, and all you do is you turn it on. It's not user configurable, and you wander around, and every second it takes GPS position, and then when you get home you plug it into your PC, and you can either use the supplied software that comes with it, which I think is only PC compatible, or you can use, there's loads of shareware and software for Mac or PC to pull that data off, and then you use the software to load up your photographs, and it compares the time you took the picture with the time on the GPS tag, and it combines them and writes it into the EXIF data. So it also uses AA batteries, so it's dead easy to use and nice and easy. So it's a good universal device. The Q-Stars BTQ 1000p is a bit different. It still does the same job in the fact that it tags your position But the Q-Stars also has Bluetooth in it, so you can use it as a GPS receiver for a pocket PC to turn your pocket PC into an in-car sat-nav. But it uses specific drivers, so it's really only Windows compatible. I think there's some free software out there where you can use it with other stuff, but the beauty with the Q-Stars is the software that comes with it has some really cool integrated features. Not only can it tag your photographs, but you can create Google Earth KMZ files. And what these are is, it's a special file that is a track of your position with embedded photographs and descriptions. So you could email somebody the KMZ file of your photo walk around the local country park, and when they open it up, it opens up Google Earth, it zooms in, and then you see like a coloured line of where you've been walking, and along that line there's the embedded photographs, so they can click on them and look at them and look at the pictures, which is really cool. And it also has an integrated Flickr uploader as well, so you can upload stuff to your Flickr account. So there's pros and cons to both. The Q-Stars also uses a rechargeable battery. And what we were sort of talking about there was the fact that with Simone was the advantages and disadvantages of having a device that had dedicated software, because she wanted something she could take on holiday with her. And although these devices can take loads of data, the problem is if you accidentally leave them on, you could fill the memory up, and she needed a way of pulling that data off. And the beauty with the A-Mod was that you can plug it into almost any PC or Mac and pull that data off and save it, to the web or on a USB stick, and clear the unit down ready for the next go. Where with the Q-Stars you need to have that dedicated software installed. So I'll leave it up to you which is probably the best for your workflow. I really like the Q-Stars BTQ1000P. That's the one I use most of the time. But the A-Mod's great too. They're both nice units. Okay, so what have we got next? Recommendations for the week. Right, I took the time to do a bit of research again this week, and I've done some recommended podcasts, etc. First recommended podcast is a video podcast for a change, rather than an audio one. Now, for those of you who haven't got iPods that have video capability, or MP3 players that don't have video capability, always remember that you can still download all the video podcasts, or all the audio ones, because if you download iTunes, just go to Apple's website and download iTunes, and it's all free. You can watch the video podcasts in iTunes, and sometimes that's a better way of doing it anyway, because you get the big full screen effect and they look a lot better. Or often you'll find sometimes the links I give you in the podcast notes will take you to the podcast main page, and you can watch them sort of in flash on that page as well. So just because you don't have a video iPod doesn't mean you can't watch them. And the first one is one done by Revision 3. Bert Monroy I think does it, and it's called Pixel Perfect. If you go to revision3.com and just look for Bert's bit of it, Pixel Perfect, you'll see. And what Bert is, he's an amazing graphical artist, and he uses Photoshop to create these unbelievable images from scratch. And it really turns you on to using Photoshop or Photoshop Elements as a tool for creating images, not just working on them from your photographs you've done, but using things from scratch. But he also does photographs as well, and the last 2 episodes have been really cool ones about HDR, using Photomatics and Photoshop, and he's got in a guest presenter who goes through it step by step, explains the process, what all the different sliders do, how you can get the different looks, whether you're going for like a drawing sort of look, that sort of HDR, through to a more natural photograph looking HDR. So Pixel Perfect over at revision3.com. Superb. I don't watch every episode. If he's going doing one about drawing something, I don't always. I'll watch a bit of it and think, but that it's definitely worth a look. Our recommended site this week is Your Photo Tips over at www.yourphototips.com. That's one word, and it's just it's a brilliant blog come website. For anybody who's into photography, whether you're a beginner or right the way through to advanced, the posts on there are really good. There's so many good tips and hints and advice about where to start, things you should be thinking about when you're taking your photography. One I was looking at the other day was, the top 16 things that a new photographer should think about, and there was great points. There was a post about shadows as well, and one of the points was, shoot for the shadows. And often we think about, when we're taking photographs, all about getting a correct exposure and make sure people's faces are correctly exposed or a subject is correctly exposed. And this guy was explaining about, well, wait a minute, the thing that gives your photograph depth and feeling is often the shadows. So, don't blow out the shadows. Shadows are an integral part of your image, and really think about how they add that third dimension to your photographs. I thought that was a really cool point, because sometimes we think shadows are bad. We don't want people's faces with shadows on and things, but that's the thing that gives it depth. Recommended Flickr photo stream is a chap called Saritsvi, I hope I'm saying that right, and he's over at www.flickr.com/people/SAHRIZVI/. Again, then the links in the show notes for the podcast. And this guy works out of the Middle East. I think it's Dubai. I could be wrong on that one, but his images have got. He does these beautiful silhouettes and really vibrant colours in his photographs. There's some great street photography as well of street workers, and there's a beautiful image in particular of these fishermen at the end of the day dividing up their catch, and it was really nice looking at images from a different culture really, and I just love the vibrancy. The link on the podcast notes actually takes you to his profile page, because the idea with all these recommending these Flickr photo streams for individuals is that you click on the link that says add as a contact, and then you just say OK, and then what happens is every time you visit your Flickr home page, you'll see their new work as they upload it, and it's a constant source of inspiration and ideas. If you're stuck for ideas, you go to Flickr, go to the home page, or go to your contacts and see what they've been doing recently, and really, really good. Related to what I've been talking about today with the Minolta SRT 101, I thought it might be an idea, if you fancied having a go at film, nip over to the Minolta SRT group, flickr.com/groups/Minolta_SRT/, and just have a look through the photographs and go for the look. Make sure you view them large, and you'll get an idea of the different dimension that film shots have. The grain is slightly different. They just have this. It's a different look to digital. It's that analog feeling, and maybe it'll inspire you to go out and get a film camera, film SLR, especially as they're so cheap. Right, technique challenges over on our Flickr forum, and we've got the difference. We run sort of two different types of assignments, if you like. There's the technique challenges, and these don't have any time limit. We'll always leave them open, and the idea is that by doing them you're practicing something that will improve your photography that then you can apply to other photographs as well. And the idea is you look at the technique challenge and then you post 3 pictures or 2 or 1, it doesn't really matter, and then then you can move on to the next technique challenge. And the other thing we do are the assignments, and these go on a month by month basis. So for example, the technique challenges at the moment, we've got no sky. So the idea is you try and take some sort of picture, landscape picture or something, where there's no sky in it. So you're looking down, maybe from a high viewpoint, or just looking down at a detail on the ground, just to get you out of the habit of always taking the same sort of rule of thirds sort of shots. And you'd be amazed by the detail we can get, and there's some great pictures over there already. I've posted my 3. And the other technique challenge is fill the frame, which I must admit I've been a bit naughty. I don't think anybody's posted any pictures yet to that one. And the idea of fill the frame is that an important rule of composition, or guide of composition, is that your subject, it's always good if your subject is dominant. And a habit that we tend to get into is not getting close enough to our subjects and making the picture dynamic enough. There's always going to be times when you don't want the subject to be really big, but by getting in close and making it, the subjects you photograph take up almost the whole of the screen, it can really add a dynamic edge to your imagery, and that's the idea of that particular assignment. So as I say, they'll always be open, those two, and I'll add to them as we go on. I won't add another one this week because we've got enough to be getting on with. And we've got a new photo assignment for August, and this one was, I was having a chat with WeJammer, and he came up with this great idea, and he said, how about from a mouse's perspective? Which I thought was quite cool. So the idea is you can post up to 3 images in that particular thread, and just some photograph, some image, a new one please, that you've taken sort of in August, that triggers, when you hear from a mouse's perspective. I mean, off the top of my head, it can just be a picture taken from down low. That's sort of in terms of where they would look for, but maybe to think in terms of maybe what a mouse might think about, what a mouse's day might be like, what sort of things might they come across. I don't know. Loads of ideas. I've got a few, but I might go on. So that's over on, if you go to Flickr groups flickr.com/groups/RobNunPhoto, you'll see the group and you'll see the thread for that particular one. Remember, you can, if you've got any digital images or film images that you've scanned that you need a little bit of advice on post-processing in Photoshop or Photoshop Elements or any of the photo editing software, feel free to email me at scalespeeder@gmail.com, and I can work on it. I can maybe give you some ideas from alternatives. That would be great. If you've got any questions or comments, please email me at scalespeeder@gmail.com, or use maybe the forum on Flickr or any of the comment forms on the site. Remember, whenever you make a comment on the blog on robnunphoto.com, that gets emailed to me as well, so I can reply to that. And what I'll do is, whenever there's a comment on the site, I always try and email you as well as posting the comment. Remember that the Flickr group's open, so submit your pictures as you're going along. Thanks to Everyday Jones with their intro and outro music, Here I Am. You can find their stuff over at podsurfaudio.com. Oh yeah, thanks to Michael for posting a podcast review over on iTunes. If anybody subscribes via the iTunes, it would be great if you could find SCL, the Subject Composition and Light podcast, and just write a little review about it, whether you liked it or not, things maybe you could do better, because it just helps, it encourages other people to subscribe as well. So thanks, Michael, for doing that. Thank you for listening and downloading the podcast. I know this has been quite a long one, but I've had quite a lot to talk about. Please email me, as I say, with any questions or comments. And I'm looking outside and I can see it's a sunny day, but there's some lovely fluffy clouds in the sky, so I'm feeling the urge to grab my camera and go out and take some shots. Thanks for listening, thanks for downloading, thanks for visiting the website, and I'll see you on Flickr.